In Redemption Falls, West Virginia, a fleeing single mother was about to discover that salvation comes with a price. What started as buying a condemned shack for $5 took a shocking turn when she found $172 million hidden beneath the floorboards. Claire Samson wasn't your typical survivor. For 8 years, she had endured an abusive marriage, known for her fierce determination to protect her daughter at any cost. When she discovered the blood money and cryptic ledger, she had no idea she was walking into a deadly conspiracy. Claire's choice between wealth and safety would lead to exposing decades of corruption and confronting the dangerous truth that sometimes doing right is more costly than staying silent. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The fuel gauge had been hovering near empty for the last 40 miles. Claire's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her eyes flicking between the winding mountain road and the dashboard. The Honda Civic coughed twice, sputtered once, and she felt her chest tighten with a familiar panic. "Not yet," she whispered. "Please, not yet." Emma sat in the passenger seat, silent. She'd been silent for most of the 3-day drive from Sacramento, speaking only in whispers to the worn stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest. Mr. Whiskers had been through everything with them. 8 years of Emma's life, countless nights of hiding in closets when Marcus's voice rose to that particular pitch that meant run, hide, be invisible. The Honda crested a hill, and Redemption Falls spread below them like a body that had forgotten to die. Claire had seen the town's name on a list of cheapest places to live in America, buried in a blog post she'd found at a truck stop in Nebraska. Population 1,247. Median home price, $12,000. 3,000 miles from California. That was all that mattered. Except the blog post hadn't mentioned that Redemption Falls looked like time had stopped somewhere around 1987 and never bothered starting again. Main Street stretched before them, a collection of storefronts with boarded windows and faded signs. Miller's Hardware, Betty's Diner, now just Betty's. The last 4 letters having fallen away, a pharmacy with bars on the windows. The skeletal structure of what must have been the mining operation loomed on the mountainside above the town, rusted conveyor belts reaching toward the sky like the bones of some prehistoric creature. Claire's throat tightened. This was supposed to be their fresh start, their sanctuary. It looked like the end of the world. "Mama!" Emma's voice was barely audible. "Is this where we're staying?" Claire forced brightness into her voice. "Just for a little while, baby, until we figure things out." Emma pressed her face against Mr. Whiskers. Claire recognized the gesture, her daughter retreating inward, building walls against disappointment. She'd learned that skill watching Claire do the same thing for 8 years. The guilt was a physical weight in Claire's chest. She'd done this. She'd married a man whose charm hid something broken and dangerous. She'd stayed too long, telling herself it would get better, that she could fix him, that leaving would be worse. And Emma had watched it all. 7 years old, and she already knew that love could look like hands around your throat. Claire pulled into a parking space in front of the county courthouse, a squat brick building that looked slightly less abandoned than its neighbors. A hand-lettered sign in the window read, "Property auction today, 2 p.m. She checked her phone. 1:47 p.m. The battery was at 3%, and she'd thrown away the charger 2 states back, afraid Marcus could somehow track them through it. Paranoid, maybe, but Marcus had found her twice before when she tried to leave. He had resources, connections, a private investigator, probably. This time, she'd left her entire life in a garbage bag behind a Walmart in Reno. Phone charger, laptop, anything with a chip or a signal. "We need to go inside for a little bit," Claire said. "Can you be very quiet and good?" Emma nodded, her eyes wide. She was always good. That was part of what broke Claire's heart. Emma had learned that being good, being quiet, being invisible might keep you safe. The courthouse interior smelled of mildew and old paper. A handful of people sat scattered across wooden benches that looked like they'd been salvaged from a church. Most were elderly, their faces carrying the particular weariness of people who'd watched their town die around them. A few younger men in work clothes sat in the back, talking in low voices. Nobody looked at Claire and Emma. That was fine. That was perfect. Behind a folding table at the front of the room, a woman in her 50s shuffled through papers. Her nameplate read, Linda Chun, County Clerk. Auction starts in 10 minutes, she called out. Properties are as is, no inspections, cash or certified check only. You bid it, you bought it, no refunds. Claire's hand went to the envelope in her jacket pocket. $847. Everything she'd managed to save over 2 years. Hidden in a box of tampons because Marcus would never look there. She'd been planning this escape for so long, squirreling away $5 here, $10 there, every time she could manage it without him noticing. It had to be enough. Linda Chun began the auction with a bored monotone. Lot 1, 412 Riverside Drive, condemned residence, minimum bid $50. An old man in overalls bid. Another man countered. The property went for $175. Claire's chest loosened slightly. These prices she could work with. 3 more properties came and went. Nobody bid on 2 of them. Claire studied the list in front of her, photocopied sheets with addresses and brief descriptions. Most were listed as uninhabitable or condemned. One caught her eye. Lot 7, end of Mercy Lane, single-family residence. As is condition, structural concerns. Minimum bid, $5. Lot 7, Linda announced. Old Ashford Place out on Mercy Lane. Now, I'm required to tell you this property hasn't been occupied in over 30 years. No electricity, no water service, significant structural damage. Building inspector marked it condemned in 1995. You bid on this, you're buying it for the land value, not the structure. Nobody raised a hand. Going once. Claire's arm went up before she could second-guess herself. Emma's fingers tightened around Mr. Whiskers. Linda's eyebrows rose slightly. $5 from the young lady. Any other bids? Silence. A few heads turned to look at Claire, curiosity mixed with pity on their faces. Going twice. Sold for $5 to bidder 17. See me after for paperwork. It took 30 minutes to complete the transaction. Claire paid in crumpled bills and received a deed with her name on it. Claire Samson, owner of property described as Lot 7, Mercy Lane, Redemption Falls, WV. Felt surreal holding proof of ownership to something. Anything. For 8 years, she'd owned nothing Marcus hadn't given her. Even her clothes had been chosen by him. Fair warning, Linda said as Claire gathered the papers. That property's been empty since before I took this job. The Ashford place has a history. Robert Ashford owned it, the mining company's CFO. He disappeared back in '87, right before the company went under. Nobody's been near it since. We'll manage, Claire said. Linda's expression softened slightly. You running from something, honey? Claire's training kicked in. The lies Marcus had taught her to tell when people noticed bruises. The practiced smile that said everything was fine. Just looking for a fresh start. Linda didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. She slid a scrap of paper across the table. You need anything, there's a church on Oak Street. Reverend Stone runs a food bank. And Layla at the diner, she's good people. Might help you find work if you need it. Thank you, Claire managed. Linda studied Emma, who'd been silent through the entire process. You take care of that little girl. I will. It was the only thing Claire was certain of anymore. Claire woke to the sound of sweeping. Her eyes opened to dim morning light filtering through the broken windows, dust motes dancing in the air. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the ache in her back from sleeping against the wall brought it all crashing back. The shack, Redemption Falls, their $5 sanctuary that was barely standing. Emma stood in the corner with a broken broom handle, pushing debris into a small pile. She worked methodically, carefully, her movements precise despite the inadequate tool. Mr. Whiskers sat propped against the wall, watching. Claire's throat tightened. Her 7-year-old daughter was trying to clean their disaster of a home. Morning, baby, Claire said softly. Emma turned, and for a moment, Claire saw relief flash across her face. relief that her mother was still there, still okay. It was a look Emma had worn too often, checking to make sure Claire had survived another night with Marcus. "I wanted to help," Emma whispered. "Make it nice." Claire stood, her muscles protesting. "You're amazing, you know that?" Emma's small smile was worth everything. They shared the last of the crackers and peanut butter for breakfast, washing it down with water from the bottles Claire had bought yesterday. Then Claire did what she always did. She made a plan. That's how you survived impossible situations. You broke them into smaller, manageable pieces. "Okay," she said, pulling out her father's old toolbox. "First, we need to make sure this place won't fall down on us. That means checking the structure, boarding up the broken windows so animals can't get in, and making sure the floor is safe to walk on." Emma nodded seriously. "Can I help?" "Always." They started with the windows. Claire found some old boards in what had once been a shed behind the shack. Termite damaged and warped, but usable. She showed Emma how to hold the boards steady while she hammered, explaining each step the way her father had once taught her in his auto shop. Those had been good years before the shop failed, before her parents died in the accident that left her alone at 19. By midday, they'd covered 2 windows. The shack felt slightly less exposed, slightly more like shelter than ruin. "Mama, I need to find something," Emma said suddenly. Claire looked up from measuring another board. "What, honey?" Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "A hiding place. A good one. In case." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. "In case Daddy comes." The words hung unspoken between them, and Claire felt her heart crack a little more. Emma shouldn't have to think this way. No 7-year-old should have to scout hiding places, plan escape routes, live in constant fear of her own father. "That's actually a smart idea," Claire said, keeping her voice steady. "You explore inside while I work on the windows. Find the best spot. Just be careful where you step, okay? Test the floor first." Emma nodded and disappeared into the main room with Mr. Whiskers, talking to him in that soft voice she used when she was scared but trying to be brave. Claire returned to her work, but her mind wasn't on the boards. It was on Marcus. Had he filed a missing persons report yet? Was he already looking for them? She'd been so careful. No credit cards, no phone signals, paying cash for everything. But Marcus was resourceful. He had money. He had connections. How long did they have? A sharp crack split the air. "Mama!" Claire dropped the hammer and ran inside, her heart hammering. Emma stood frozen in the middle of the main room, one foot suspended above a hole in the floor where a board had given way. "Don't move," Claire commanded. She approached carefully, testing each step. When she reached Emma, she lifted her daughter away from the hole, checking her over for injuries. "I'm okay," Emma said. "But Mama, look." She pointed down into the darkness beneath the broken floorboard. Claire knelt and peered into the gap. At first, she saw only shadows and the packed dirt of the crawl space. Then her eyes adjusted and she noticed something that didn't belong. A straight edge, too regular to be natural. Something geometric in the chaos. "Stay back," she told Emma. She used the claw end of her hammer to pry up the adjacent boards. They came away easily, rotted through at the nails. More boards. She worked faster now, some instinct making her hands shake. The opening widened, and suddenly she could see what was hidden beneath. Packages. Dozens of them. Wrapped in plastic, vacuum-sealed, stacked with military precision in a space that had been deliberately constructed beneath the floor. And through the clear plastic, she could see what they contained. Money. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills. "Mama!" Emma's voice seemed to come from very far away. "What is it?" Claire's hands trembled as she reached down and pulled up one package. It was heavy, solid. The bills inside were old. She could see dates from the 1980s through the plastic. But they looked pristine, perfectly preserved. She tore away more boards, revealing the full extent of the hidden compartment. The packages filled nearly the entire space beneath the main room. There had to be hundreds of them, maybe thousands, and nestled among them, she found something else. A leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with handwritten entries in neat columns. Dates, names, Numbers that made Claire's head spin. Emma crept closer, her curiosity overcoming her caution. Is that real money? I think so, Claire whispered. Does this mean we can buy food? Emma's voice held something Claire hadn't heard in so long. Hope. And maybe new clothes? And fix the house? Claire stared at the fortune beneath her floor. Her mind raced through calculations. Even if this was just a fraction of what it looked like, they were looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe millions. They could disappear. Really disappear. New identities, new city, new life. Marcus would never find them. Emma could have therapy for her trauma. Claire could go back to school. They could have a real home, security, safety. Everything she'd been trying to give her daughter and failing. But even as the fantasy spun out in her mind, Claire's survival instincts kicked in. The same instincts that had kept her alive through 8 years with Marcus. Money hidden under floorboards wasn't lost treasure. It was someone's secret. And secrets this big, this carefully hidden, meant danger. She thought of Linda at the courthouse mentioning Robert Ashford, the disappeared CFO, the mining company scandal, the timing late 1980s. This money had a story, and that story probably involved people who would want it back. Emma, Claire said carefully, this is going to be our special secret, okay? Just ours. We don't tell anyone about this. Not anyone. Do you understand? Emma nodded solemnly. She understood secrets. She'd kept them her whole life. Claire pulled up one more package and opened it. The bills were real. She could tell from the texture, the printing, the serial numbers. She counted quickly. $10,000 in this one package alone. She did rough math based on what she could see. Conservative estimate. At least 100 packages visible. Probably more beneath. At least $1 million. Maybe 10 times that. Maybe more. Her hands shook as she carefully replaced the boards, hammering them back down. She kept one package, the one she'd opened, and the ledger. Everything else went back into hiding. Can we use some? Emma asked. Just a little? Claire looked at her daughter's hopeful face, at the ratty clothes she wore, at the stuffed rabbit that was more patches than original fabric. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She thought about the empty feeling in her own stomach, the dwindling cash in her pocket, the impossibility of finding work in a dying town without revealing too much about herself. Maybe, she said slowly, just enough to fix this place up, make it safe. But we have to be very, very careful, baby. We can't let anyone know where it came from, and we can't tell anyone we found it. Why not? Because money like this means someone dangerous lost it, Claire thought. Because nothing this good comes without a price. Because we just stumbled into something that could save us or kill us, and I don't know which yet. Because it's safer this way, she said instead. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Claire sat with the ledger and a flashlight. The entries were coded, letters and numbers that didn't immediately make sense. But some things were clear. Dates spanning from 1978 to 1987. Names that were partially abbreviated. Dollar amounts that made her dizzy. And at the very end, in different handwriting, a single sentence. If you're reading this, I'm already dead. Use it to make things right. R.A. Robert Ashford. Claire closed the ledger and looked at the package of money sitting beside her sleeping daughter. $100,000 by her count. Maybe more. Could change everything. Or it could destroy them. Tomorrow she'd have to decide which. 2 days passed before Claire worked up the courage to venture back into town. 2 days of rationing their remaining food, of watching Emma grow quieter, of lying awake at night weighing impossible choices. The package of money sat hidden in her father's toolbox, wrapped in an old t-shirt. $100,000 that might as well have been a live grenade. She needed information, and she needed it without revealing why she was asking. Emma, I need you to stay here, Claire said on the morning of the 3rd day. Lock the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone except me. Can you do that? Emma nodded, clutching Mr. Whiskers. How long will you be gone? A few hours. I'm just going to get supplies and look around town. Claire knelt to meet her daughter's eyes. You remember our rules? Stay quiet. Stay hidden. Don't answer the door. Emma recited them like a prayer. That's my girl. Claire kissed her forehead, hating herself for leaving, hating that Emma had to be alone, hating everything about their situation except the fact that they were away from Marcus. The drive into town took 15 minutes on the rutted dirt road. Redemption Falls looked no better in daylight than it had on their arrival. If anything, the decay was more obvious. Paint peeling from buildings that leaned slightly, as if exhausted by the effort of standing. Empty lots where structures had been demolished and never rebuilt. A banner across Main Street advertising a 4th of July parade from 2019, still hanging. She parked in front of the diner, Betty's or what remained of the sign. Through the window, she could see a handful of customers at the counter, and a waitress with dark hair pulled into a ponytail, moving between them with practiced efficiency. The bell above the door chimed as Claire entered. Conversation paused. Eyes turned toward her. The stranger, the newcomer. Then, just as quickly, they turned away. Whatever curiosity they felt wasn't strong enough to overcome the town's exhaustion. Sit anywhere, honey, the waitress called. Be right with you. Claire chose a booth near the back, where she could watch the door. Old habits. She'd learned to always know her exits, always keep her back to the wall. The waitress appeared moments later, coffee pot in hand. Up close, Claire could see she was younger than she'd first appeared, late 20s, maybe 30. Her eyes held the particular weariness of someone who'd lived more life than their years suggested. Coffee? She asked. Please. The waitress poured, then studied Claire with a gaze that felt assessing but not unkind. You're new. Passing through? Actually, I just moved here. Bought a property at auction a few days ago. The waitress's eyebrows rose. Auction? Which one? The Ashford place, out on Mercy Lane. The reaction was immediate. The waitress's expression shifted, surprise mixed with something that might have been concern. The old shack? Honey, that place has been condemned for 30 years. I got it for $5, Claire said. It's all I could afford. A long pause. Then the waitress slid into the booth across from her, setting the coffee pot down. I'm Layla Thompson, and you look like someone who's running from something. Claire's guard went up instantly. I'm just looking for a fresh start. Aha! Layla's expression was knowing but not judgmental. Look, I've been working this diner for 7 years. I've seen people pass through. I know the difference between tourists, job seekers, and runners. You're a runner. She held up a hand before Claire could protest. I'm not asking why. Lord knows everyone's got their reasons. But if you're planning to stay in this town, you should know what you're getting into. Claire studied her. Every instinct screamed not to trust anyone, not to reveal anything. But she needed information, and Layla seemed genuinely concerned rather than threatening. What should I know? Claire asked carefully. Layla glanced around the diner, then lowered her voice. Redemption Falls used to be a company town, everything owned or controlled by Redemption Mining Corporation. Back in the 70s and 80s, this place was thriving. 3,000 people, good jobs, families. Then the mine started having accidents. Men dying from black lung, cave-ins, equipment failures. Families complained, tried to organize, and suddenly those families had more accidents. House fires, car crashes, people disappearing. Claire's coffee grew cold as Layla spoke. She thought of the ledger hidden in her shack, the dates spanning those exact years. By 87, the whole thing collapsed. Layla continued. Federal investigation, corruption charges, embezzlement. The company declared bankruptcy, and everyone lost their pensions. Most families left. The ones who stayed. She gestured at the nearly empty diner. Well, we're still here, for whatever that's worth. What about Robert Ashford? Claire asked, trying to sound casual. Layla's eyes sharpened. The property's previous owner? He was the CFO, chief financial officer. Word is he ran off with money that was already stolen from the workers. Some people say he made it to South America. Others think he's buried somewhere in these mountains. Either way, nobody's seen him since the company went under. She paused. Why do you ask? Just curious about the history. Linda at the courthouse mentioned him. Layla didn't look convinced, but she let it pass. Well, the house hasn't been touched since he disappeared. Surprised they let you buy it, honestly. Most people around here think it's cursed. Do you? Layla shrugged. I think bad things happened in this town, and people need explanations. Curses are easier than admitting their neighbors sold them out for money. She stood, picking up the coffee pot. You want some breakfast? On the house. You look like you could use it. Claire's pride wanted to refuse, but her stomach had other ideas. That's kind of you. We take care of each other here. Not much else to do. Layla headed toward the kitchen, then turned back. Oh, and fair warning. Sheriff Pritchard comes in around 10. He's complicated. Not corrupt exactly, but he's been sheriff a long time and he knows how to survive. He'll want to know about you, ask questions. Just be ready. She disappeared into the kitchen before Claire could respond. Claire checked her watch. 9:47. She had 13 minutes to decide how much truth to tell the local law enforcement. Through the window, she watched Main Street. An elderly woman struggled with grocery bags. A man in work clothes climbed into a pickup truck. Normal life or what passed for it in a dying town. She thought about Emma, alone in the shack. About the fortune hidden beneath the floorboards. About Marcus, probably looking for them right now. The bell above the door chimed. A man in a sheriff's uniform entered, 50-something, with the kind of face that had learned to smile while calculating advantage. He scanned the diner, his gaze landing on Claire and staying there. Sheriff Pritchard. Layla emerged from the kitchen with a plate of eggs and toast. Sheriff, she called. Your usual spot's open. But Pritchard was already walking toward Claire's booth. Morning, he said pleasantly. Don't believe we've met. Tom Pritchard, County Sheriff. He extended a hand. Claire shook it, noting his firm grip, the way his eyes catalogued everything about her. Her clothes, her worn shoes, the defensive tension in her shoulders. Claire Samson. Heard you bought the old Ashford place. That's brave. Or desperate, Claire said. His smile widened, but didn't reach his eyes. Well, welcome to Redemption Falls. Always good to see new residents. Where are you from, Miss Samson? And there it was, the first real test. How much to reveal? How much to hide? Claire had learned to lie from Marcus. He taught her well, if unintentionally. The best lies stayed close to the truth. West Coast originally, she said. Moved around a lot the last few years. Looking to settle somewhere quiet. Quiet we've got plenty of. Pritchard's tone remained pleasant, but his gaze was sharp. You have family? Job lined up? Just me and my daughter, 7 years old. I'll be looking for work. What kind of work? Before Claire could answer, Layla appeared with coffee for the sheriff. Tom, let the woman eat her breakfast before you interrogate her. She just got here. Pritchard chuckled. Not interrogating, Layla, just being neighborly. But he stood, taking the coffee. Miss Samson, you need anything, you let me know. That's what we're here for. He moved to his usual spot at the counter, but Claire could feel his attention still on her, watching, assessing. Layla set down the plate of food. Eat, she said quietly. Then get what you need and go home to your daughter. And Claire? She waited until Claire met her eyes. Whatever you're running from, I hope these mountains hide you well enough. Claire ate quickly, paid for supplies at the general store with carefully counted cash, and made one more stop, the library. It was small, housed in what had once been someone's home. An elderly woman sat behind the desk, her white hair pulled back in a bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Help you? She asked. I'm looking for information about the town's history. The mining company. The woman's expression shifted, interest mixed with something else. Knowing. We've got archives in the back. Local newspapers from 1950 to 2000. After that, everything's online if you have internet. She stood slowly, leaning on a cane. I'm Dolly McCrae. Been running this library for 40 years. Claire Samson. I just moved here. I know. Bought the Ashford place. Dolly studied her with unsettling intensity. Interesting choice. It was affordable. Most things are when nobody else wants them. Dolly led her to a back room filled with bound volumes of old newspapers. Take your time. But Miss Samson? She paused in the doorway. Sometimes the past won't stay buried, honey. Be careful what you dig up. The words hung in the air long after Dolly left. Claire spent an hour reading through articles about the mining company, the accidents, the investigations that went nowhere. She found photos of protesters, of families who'd lost fathers and sons. She found Robert Ashford's picture. A handsome man in his 40s with an easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And she found hints of something larger. References to outside investors. Mentions of union leaders who disappeared. Questions about where pension funds had actually gone. The pieces were there, scattered across decades of newsprint. A conspiracy of corruption so deep it had poisoned an entire town. Claire checked out 2 books on local history, using her real name because she had no choice. Dolly watched her sign the card with those knowing eyes. Come back anytime, Dolly said. I've got more stories than what's in the books. It was almost 3 when Claire returned to the shack. Emma had the door locked, as instructed, and opened it only after hearing Claire's voice. Did you get food? Emma asked hopefully. I did. Claire unpacked groceries, bread, peanut butter, canned soup, crackers. Simple things. Cheap things. She'd spent exactly $47, leaving her with $800 left. $800 or $100,000 hidden in the toolbox. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Claire sat with the library books and the ledger, trying to make sense of what she'd found. The pieces were starting to fit together. The money beneath her floor wasn't just stolen. It was the heart of a decades-old conspiracy. And everyone in this town had been touched by it, one way or another. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Emma murmured in her sleep, and Claire moved to check on her. Her daughter's face was peaceful, free from the fear that usually creased her features even in dreams. They had a roof over their heads, barely. They had food for a week, maybe 2 if she stretched it. They had each other, and they had a secret that could either save them or destroy them. Claire made her decision. Tomorrow she'd use some of the money, just enough to make the shack livable to give Emma stability. She'd be careful, discreet. Pay cash, spread purchases across neighboring towns, create a story about insurance money or savings. Just enough to survive. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that her decision had already set events in motion. That in Sacramento, Marcus had just gotten a tip from his private investigator about property records in West Virginia. That in a mansion 200 miles away, Brittany Ashford Morrison had received word that someone had bought her father's old property. And that in a hospital room in New Jersey, Vincent Calabrese was being told he had 6 months to live and making plans to finally recover what was taken from him 37 years ago. The shack settled around them with familiar creaks and groans. And beneath the floor, the fortune waited, patient as death, for someone to claim it. Claire made her decision on a Tuesday morning, watching Emma try to wash her face with bottled water in a bucket. $2,000. That's what she'd take from the hidden fortune. Enough to make the shack livable, to buy proper food, to give Emma something resembling stability. Not enough to draw attention. She told herself it was borrowing, not stealing. That she'd find a way to make it right eventually. The mental gymnastics felt familiar. She'd spent years justifying staying with Marcus using similar logic. But this was different. This was survival. She pulled $200 bills from the package in the toolbox, her hands shaking slightly. The bills felt surreal, crisp despite their age, marked with dates from the mid-'80s. She folded them carefully and tucked them into the inside pocket of her jacket. Emma, we're going on a little trip today, she said, to some stores in other towns. We're going to get supplies to fix up our house. Emma's face lit up with an expression Claire hadn't seen in months. Hope. The guilt was immediate and crushing. Over the next week, Claire executed her plan with careful precision. She drove to stores in 3 different towns, never the same place twice, never spending more than a few $100s at once. She paid cash and gave a rehearsed story when asked. Her late husband's life insurance had finally come through. A small settlement. Nothing remarkable. The story felt dirty in her mouth. Using the fiction of Marcus's death when she spent every waking moment afraid he was still hunting them. But it worked. People nodded sympathetically and didn't ask follow-up questions. She bought lumber and tools, roofing supplies and nails. A small camping stove and propane. Real groceries, fresh vegetables, meat, milk. Clothes for Emma that actually fit. A burner phone for emergencies. Heavy-duty locks for the doors. And slowly, carefully, she began transforming the shack. The roof came first. Claire had learned basic carpentry from her father, and muscle memory returned as she worked. Emma helped where she could, holding boards steady, handing over nails. They worked in companionable silence, and sometimes Emma would speak. Full sentences, paragraphs even. The selective mutism was easing. By the end of the first week, the shack had a sound roof and functioning doors with deadbolts. Claire had managed to get electricity turned on through the local utility, paying the deposit in cash. The lights flickered when they first came on, and Emma had actually laughed. A sound so rare and precious that Claire had to turn away to hide her tears. But each improvement was a signal flare to anyone watching. Deputy Kyle Morrison noticed first. At 26, he was the youngest member of Sheriff Pritchard's small force, and he'd been driving past the old Ashford place every few days since his Aunt Brittany had called asking him to keep an eye on things. He'd thought it was weird at the time. Aunt Brittany lived in Charleston, had money, rarely contacted him except to remind him she'd paid for police academy. But family was family, and the request seemed harmless enough. Until he saw the repairs. New roof. Boarded windows replaced with actual glass. A car parked outside, old Honda Civic, California plates. Someone was living there. Someone was fixing it up. He called Brittany that evening. "You're sure?" Her voice carried that sharp edge he remembered from childhood. The one that meant someone was about to get in trouble. "Yes, ma'am. Looks like a woman and a kid. They've been working on the place all week." A long pause. "Find out who she is. Where she came from. Everything." "Aunt Brittany, I don't know if—" "Kyle." Her voice went cold. "Who paid for your training? Who got you that job when you had nowhere else to go?" He closed his eyes. "You did. Then do this one small thing for me." After he hung up, Kyle sat in his patrol car outside the diner, feeling dirty. He was a cop. He was supposed to protect people, not spy on them for his wealthy aunt. But Brittany had leverage, and they both knew it. He didn't know that 2 booths inside the diner, a man was also taking notes. Jack Wade had been in Redemption Falls for 3 days, and he was good enough at his job that nobody had noticed him yet. Former Marine turned private investigator, he'd tracked targets through worse terrain than dying Appalachian towns. Brittany Ashford Morrison was paying him well to investigate whoever had bought her father's old property. She'd been watching that place for decades, convinced her father had hidden money there before he disappeared. When the property records showed a sale, she'd hired Jack within hours. He'd expected to find treasure hunters or scam artists. Instead, he'd found Claire Samson and her daughter. A woman who jumped at sudden sounds, who constantly scanned her surroundings, who had the hollowed-out look of someone running from something worse than poverty. Jack had seen enough domestic violence cases during his time in base security to recognize the signs. The way she positioned herself in public spaces. The hypervigilance. The daughter's selective mutism that his research had uncovered through medical records, he definitely shouldn't have been able to access. He was supposed to determine if Claire had found the money. Instead, he was watching a survivor trying to build a life from nothing, and it was making him question why exactly he was working for Brittany Ashford Morrison. But a job was a job, and he had bills to pay. Inside the diner, Layla refilled Claire's coffee and studied her friend with concern. They'd been meeting twice a week now, brief conversations over coffee while Emma colored in the booth beside them. Layla had gradually drawn out pieces of Claire's story. Not everything, but enough to understand Claire was running from an abusive husband. Enough to know she was terrified of being found. "You seem better," Layla said. More settled. The house is livable now. Emma's sleeping better. We have food. Claire didn't mention where the money came from. She'd stuck to her insurance settlement story. That's good. Layla hesitated. Claire, I heard you were asking about jobs around town. I need to work. Can't live on savings forever. I might know something. Reverend Stone needs help at the church, organizing the food bank, doing outreach to families. It doesn't pay much, but it's legitimate work. Claire's face brightened. Legitimate. That word carried weight. I'd love that. Thank you. What neither of them noticed was Sheriff Pritchard at the counter, listening to every word. That afternoon, Claire received an invitation to the church's community meal. Reverend Stone had heard about her from Layla and wanted to welcome her properly. The note was handwritten. Kind. She almost didn't go. Every public appearance was a risk. But Emma needed socialization, needed to see normal people doing normal things. The church was small but well-maintained, its white paint fresh despite the town's general decay. Inside, 24 people gathered around tables, elderly couples, a few families, people who looked like they were one paycheck from homelessness. Reverend Stone was younger than Claire expected. 58, but with the weathered face of someone who'd lived hard. His smile was genuine when he shook her hand. Ms. Samson, welcome. Layla speaks highly of you. They talked briefly about the job. 20 hours a week, $10 an hour. It was nothing, barely enough to supplement her dwindling legitimate cash. But it was honest work, and it gave her a reason to be in town. She accepted. Around her, Claire felt the weight of attention. People were curious about the newcomer, the woman who'd bought the cursed Ashford place. She fielded questions carefully, sticking to her cover story, revealing nothing important. She didn't notice Sheriff Pritchard arrive late, standing in the back, watching. That night, her phone buzzed, the burner she'd bought for emergencies. Unknown number. Her finger hovered over the screen for a long moment before she opened it. The message was simple. I know where you are. We need to talk. The phone slipped from Claire's hands. Emma was asleep 10 feet away, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her chin. They'd been here less than 3 weeks. She'd been so careful. Marcus had found them. Claire's first instinct was to run. Pack the car, grab Emma, drive through the night. Start over somewhere else. It's what she'd always done before when he got too close. But as she frantically started pulling clothes from the dresser she'd bought at a thrift store, Emma's sleepy voice stopped her. Are we leaving? Claire turned. Emma sat up in bed, Mr. Whiskers clutched tight, her eyes wide with that terrible understanding children shouldn't have. But I like it here now, Emma whispered. I have a real bed, and Layla is nice. And Reverend Stone said I could help with the food bank. And we finally have a home that doesn't leak. The words pierced Claire's heart. They'd been running for so long. Emma had never had stability, never had a place that felt safe. And now, just when they were starting to build something, Claire made a decision. No, baby, we're not leaving. But Daddy, I know. Claire sat on the bed, pulled Emma close. But I'm done running. If we run now, we'll run forever. He'll always find us. We'll never have a real home. So we're going to stay. And we're going to figure this out. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, are you scared? Yes, Claire admitted. But I'm more scared of running forever. Aren't you? Emma nodded against her mother's shoulder. Then we stay, Claire said. We stand our ground. Together. She didn't know if she was being brave or foolish. She didn't know if the money hidden beneath their floor was leverage or a death sentence. She didn't know if Marcus would hurt them or if someone else would get to them first. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Emma deserved better than a life spent fleeing. And for the first time in 8 years, Claire was going to fight instead of run. Outside, in a car parked on the road, Jack Wade lowered his camera. He'd gotten clear photos of Claire and Emma at the church, documented the improvements to the property, compiled his evidence. He should send it all to Brittany tonight. That's what she was paying him for. Instead, he sat staring at the photos on his screen. A woman and child who'd survived hell and were trying to build something from nothing. And he wondered exactly whose side he was supposed to be on. Claire knocked on Dolly McRae's door at 8 the next morning, Emma's hand tight in hers. The elderly woman answered in a faded housecoat, her sharp eyes immediately assessing. "Ms. Samson, early visit." "I need to know about Robert Ashford," Claire said without preamble. "What he hid in that shack. And I think you know." Dolly's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition. Maybe relief. "Come in." The house was a museum of Redemption Falls history. Photographs covering every wall, boxes of documents stacked in corners, old newspapers yellowing on shelves. Dolly led them to a cluttered kitchen table and poured coffee with shaking hands. "I wondered when you'd come," she said finally. "Wondered if you'd found it." Claire pulled out the ledger. "Tell me what this means." Dolly stared at it like she'd seen a ghost. Her fingers traced the leather cover reverently. "I typed some of these entries 37 years ago when I was Robert's secretary. And his lover." Emma quietly colored in the corner while Dolly spoke, her voice raw with decades of guilt. She described the corruption, stolen pensions, bribed politicians, mob money laundered through the mining operation. Robert had been part of it, but his conscience eventually broke. "He was going to expose everything," Dolly said. "Take the money they'd stolen and use it as leverage. Force the truth out. But he died before he could. Heart attack right there in that shack." "Who buried him?" "His mob contact. Man named Calabrese. He panicked, buried Robert in the crawl space and ran. Never knew about the money hidden above." Claire's blood ran cold. "Is Calabrese still alive?" "Last I heard." Dolly met her eyes. "And if you found that money, others will come looking. They always do." Claire and Dolly spent 3 days decoding the ledger at Dolly's kitchen table while Emma played quietly in the corner. The cipher was simpler than Claire expected. Basic substitution combined with mining company codes Dolly remembered from her secretary days. What emerged made Claire's hands shake. Names. Dozens of them. A senator still in office. The current governor's father. Business leaders who now sat on corporate boards. Union officials who'd been paid to look away while their members died. Dates of bribes. Amounts laundered. Workers whose accidents were actually murders. "This is why Robert wanted to disappear with it," Dolly whispered. "This ledger is a roadmap to 30 years of corruption. He could have brought down everyone." "And now I have it," Claire said quietly. That afternoon, Marcus found her. She was having coffee at the diner with Layla when he walked in. 8 years of marriage meant she felt him before she saw him. That prickle of awareness, the way the air changed when he entered a room. He looked good. He always did in public. Expensive jacket, concerned expression, every inch the worried husband searching for his missing family. "Claire." His voice carried across the diner, drawing every eye. "Thank God. I've been so worried." Layla's hand found Claire's under the table, squeezing hard. "Stay calm." Marcus slid into the booth uninvited, his smile not reaching his eyes. "You look good. Is Emma here? I've missed her so much." "She's safe," Claire said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm sure she is. You're a good mother." His tone was warm, but his eyes cataloged everything. Her new clothes, the confidence she hadn't had before. "We need to talk, privately, about our family." Layla stood. "I'll give you 2 a minute." The moment she was out of earshot, Marcus's mask dropped. He leaned forward, voice low and vicious. "I know you have money now. I've been watching. New roof, electricity, playing house in that shack." His smile was cruel. "Where'd it come from, Claire? Rob a bank? Sell something that belonged to me?" "I have insurance money. From when my parents died." "Liar." He grabbed her wrist under the table, grip bruising. "You come back with Emma, or I'll destroy you. Unfit mother. Kidnapping. Mental instability. I'll take her, and you'll never see her again. And in a town this small, who do you think the cops will believe? The respected businessman or the broke runaway living in a condemned shack?" Claire met his eyes. For the first time in 8 years, she didn't look away. "I'll get a restraining order." Marcus laughed. "Good luck with that." He released her wrist and stood, his public mask sliding back into place. Think about it, Claire. You've got 48 hours to do the right thing. He left whistling. Claire sat trembling, but she didn't cry. She'd made her choice. She wasn't running. That evening, Jack Wade knocked on her door. The knock came at dusk. Claire's hand instinctively moved to the kitchen knife she'd started keeping nearby, her body tensing with that familiar hypervigilance. Ms. Samson. A man's voice, calm and professional. My name is Jack Wade. I'm a private investigator, and I need to talk to you. It's important. Claire's heart hammered. She looked at Emma, who'd frozen mid-coloring, Mr. Whiskers clutched tight. Go to the bedroom, Claire whispered. Lock the door. Emma disappeared without a word. Claire opened the door with the chain still attached. Through the gap, she saw a man in his late 30s, military bearing evident in his posture. He held up his hands, showing they were empty. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to warn you. About what? About Brittany Ashford Morrison. She hired me to investigate you. She thinks you found money her father hid here. He paused. And I'm pretty sure you did. Claire's mind raced. Lie? Slam the door? Run? Jack continued before she could decide. I've spent 3 days watching you. I know you're running from an abusive husband. I know you're trying to protect your daughter. And I know Brittany doesn't care about any of that. She just wants the money. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm done working for her. Because what she's planning, legal action, intimidation, worse, isn't right. His eyes were steady, honest. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I know what it looks like when someone's been through combat. Different kind of combat, maybe, but you've got the same look. And I don't work against people like you anymore. Against every instinct, Claire believed him. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the exhaustion of carrying this alone. Maybe it was the military reference. Her father had been a Marine. She opened the door. They talked for an hour. Jack laid out what he knew. Brittany's decades-long obsession with finding her father's money, Deputy Morrison's role as her spy, the legal strategy she was planning to claim the property was fraudulently sold. There's more, Jack said. FBI agent named David Reyes has been asking questions around town. He's investigating Cold War-era corruption in the mining industry. If that ledger is what I think it is, he's going to want it. And your ex-husband filed a missing persons report in California. It's only a matter of time before local law enforcement gets involved. Claire felt the walls closing in from every direction. What do I do? That depends. Did you find the money? She hesitated, then nodded. And a ledger. Documents Robert Ashford kept about the corruption. Jack whistled low. That makes you either very rich or very dead. Probably both. He leaned forward. Here's my advice. You need allies and you need them fast. I can help. I'll feed Brittany false information, buy you time. But you need to figure out your endgame. You can't hide this forever. After Jack left, Claire sat in the dark, thinking. Emma emerged from the bedroom, silent, and curled against her mother's side. Is the bad man going to find us? Emma whispered. I don't know, baby, but we're going to be smart. We're going to be careful. The next morning brought a new threat. Dolly called the burner phone, her voice urgent. Claire, you need to get to my house. Now, someone's here you need to meet. Claire almost refused. But Dolly's tone carried something beyond fear. It carried recognition. She left Emma with Layla at the diner and drove to Dolly's house. Inside, she found an elderly man sitting at the kitchen table, drinking tea with the ease of someone who'd been invited. He looked grandfatherly, white hair, weathered face, cardigan sweater. But his eyes were sharp, assessing, and something in his bearing suggested violence held in careful check. Ms. Samson, he said pleasantly. My name is Vincent Calabrese. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Claire's blood turned to ice. The mob connection Dolly had mentioned. The man who'd buried Robert Ashford. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. Vinny's smile was patient. I've been looking for that money for 37 years. The pattern of activity around the property. Repairs, electricity, new locks, Tells me someone finally found what Robert hid. And since you're the new owner, simple deduction. Dolly spoke quietly from the corner. He showed up an hour ago. Knocked on my door like an old friend. I thought you should hear what he has to say. Vinny pulled out a medical file, slid it across the table. Lung cancer. Terminal. 6 months, maybe less. I'm not here to hurt anyone, Miss Samson. I'm here to make a deal. What kind of deal? Split it. 86 million for me, 86 million for you. We both walk away rich. No one needs to know about the rest. His voice was reasonable, almost kind. I want to leave something to my grandchildren. They won't speak to me now, but money. Money opens doors. You want security for your daughter. We both get what we need. No. Vinny's expression didn't change. I respect that. But consider. I'm offering you a peaceful resolution. There are others coming who won't be so generous. That FBI agent? He'll seize everything as evidence. Brittany Ashford Morrison? She'll tie you up in legal hell for years. Your ex-husband? His eyes narrowed. I know about him. Marcus Williams. He's already in town, by the way. Checked into the motel yesterday. Claire felt the world tilt. Marcus was here. Not just threatening by text, but actually here. And there are others you don't know about yet, Vinny continued. People connected to those names in Robert's ledger. Powerful people who don't want their secrets exposed. When word gets out, and it will, they'll come for you. Some will use lawyers. Some will use worse. Why tell me this? Because despite what you might think, I'm not a monster. I've done bad things. I've hurt people. But I've never hurt children, and I've never hurt women who didn't choose the life. He stood slowly, moving like someone whose body hurt constantly. You have 48 hours to think about my offer. After that, I'll need to consider other options. And Miss Samson, I truly hope you choose wisely, for your daughter's sake. He left his number on the table and walked out. Claire sat frozen, Dolly's hand on her shoulder. He means it, Dolly said quietly. He'll do what he has to, but he's also telling the truth. He's the least dangerous of everyone coming for that money. That night, Emma had her first session with Dr. Patricia Huang via telehealth. Claire had finally broken down and contacted the therapist. Knowing Emma needed help processing her trauma, Dr. Huang was gentle, professional. She had Emma draw pictures while they talked. Houses, families, and treasure chests with bad men surrounding them. Emma, Dr. Huang said carefully, these bad men in your picture, are they real or imaginary? Emma looked at her mother, then back at the screen. They're coming for the secret money we found. Mama says we have to be careful. Claire's heart stopped. Dr. Huang's expression shifted, concern replacing professional calm. Secret money? After the session ended, Dr. Huang called Claire's phone. Miss Samson, I need to ask you directly. Is Emma in danger? Claire wanted to lie, but Dr. Huang had that tone, the one that said she already knew the answer. It's complicated. I'm a mandated reporter. If I believe Emma is in danger, I'm legally required to contact Child Services. I'm giving you the courtesy of advance notice. You have 24 hours to explain what's happening, or I'll need to file a report. After she hung up, Claire sat on the floor of the shack and finally broke. The tears came in racking sobs. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the impossible choices crushing down at once. She couldn't run, couldn't hide, couldn't keep the money, couldn't give it up, couldn't trust anyone, couldn't survive alone. Every path led to destruction. The door opened. Layla stood there, concern written across her face. Claire? Emma called me from your phone. Said her mama was crying and wouldn't stop. Claire looked up at her friend through tears. And for the first time, she told someone the whole truth. Everything. Marcus. The money. The ledger. The threats converging from every direction. The awful realization that trying to save her daughter might be what destroys them both. Layla listened without interruption. When Claire finished, Layla sat down beside her on the floor. Okay, she said simply. We'll figure this out. You're not alone anymore, Claire. You hear me? You're not alone. And for the first time since finding that cursed fortune, Claire let herself believe that might actually mean something. Outside, in the darkness, for different people watched the shack. Deputy Morrison, reporting to his aunt. Jack Wade, trying to decide whose side he was really on. Marcus Williams, planning his next move. And Agent David Reyes, who'd finally connected the dots between the property records, the historical investigation, and the sudden activity around the old Ashford place. The siege was coming. The only question was who would strike first. Claire made the call at dawn, before she could second-guess herself. Agent Reyes? My name is Claire Samson. I need to meet with you. I have information about your investigation into Redemption Falls. 2 hours later, she sat in Reverend Stone's church office with Dolly beside her. Agent Reyes arrived precisely on time. A man in his mid-40s with tired eyes and the methodical manner of someone who'd spent decades building cases brick by brick. Claire had rehearsed this. She'd planned every word. But when the moment came, she just told the truth. I found $172 million hidden in my house, and a ledger documenting 30 years of corruption in the mining industry. She slid copies across the desk, the decoded entries, the names, the dates, the evidence of systematic theft and murder that had destroyed an entire town. Reyes's hands shook as he read. This was it. The breakthrough his entire career had been building toward. The missing piece that could finally bring justice to families who'd waited decades. Where did you get this? Claire explained everything. Fleeing Marcus, buying the shack, Emma's discovery, her desperate decision to use some of the money. And now, the convergence of threats, Brittany, Vinny, Marcus, the mandated reporter call looming. I'm offering you a deal, she said, voice steady despite her fear. I'll cooperate fully, testify if needed, turn over all the evidence and the money. But I need protection. Not just from the people in that ledger. From my ex-husband. He's here in town, and he's threatened to take my daughter. Reyes studied her for a long moment. She could see the calculation in his eyes, the idealist battling the pragmatist, the letter of the law versus the spirit of justice. You should have reported this immediately. I know, but I was scared. I'm still scared. If I do this by the book, that money becomes evidence. You get nothing. And I can't promise what happens with your custody situation. That's outside my jurisdiction. I don't want the money, Claire said. I just want Emma safe. Something in Reyes's expression softened. He thought of his own uncle, dead in a mining accident that was probably murder. He thought of all the families who'd lost everything while criminals lived comfortably on stolen money. Okay, he said finally. Here's what I can do. I'll bring you into federal witness protection, limited but real. You cooperate, you testify, and I'll make sure your ex-husband faces charges for his threats and harassment. The custody issue gets flagged with authorities. You'll have protection during the investigation and trial. And the money goes into evidence, eventually distributed to victims' families, if we can identify them. He paused. You won't see a penny of it, Miss Samson. That clear? Claire felt relief wash over her. The relief of finally doing something right, even if it cost her everything. That's what I want. Let's do it. They were still discussing logistics when Layla burst through the door, breathless. Claire, it's Emma. Marcus showed up at the diner. He tried to take her. Claire's world narrowed to a single point. She was moving before anyone could stop her. Running for her car, Reyes and Dolly close behind. At the diner, she found chaos. Layla stood blocking the door, her face bleeding from a split lip. Deputy Morrison had Marcus against the wall in handcuffs. And Emma was screaming, the sound raw and terrified. Claire swept her daughter into her arms. I've got you. I've got you. You're safe. He said I had to go with him. Emma sobbed. He said you were sick and I had to go home with him. Marcus's mask had completely shattered. His face was twisted with rage, all pretense of the concerned father gone. She's my daughter. You can't keep her from me. Deputy Morrison looked between Marcus and Claire, his young face struggling with the weight of the decision in front of him. His aunt had told him to stay out of Claire's problems. But he'd seen Marcus shove Layla, seen a grown man trying to forcibly take a screaming child. "Mr. Williams, you're under arrest for assault and attempted custodial interference," Morrison said, his voice shaking but firm. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Marcus snarled. "I have lawyers. I have connections. I'll own this pathetic town when I'm done." Reyes stepped forward, badge out. "FBI. Mr. Williams, I'd suggest you stop talking." Sheriff Pritchard arrived minutes later, assessed the situation with his politician's eye, and made his choice. Federal involvement meant this was bigger than small-town politics. He backed Morrison's arrest. Marcus was taken to the county jail. A temporary restraining order was issued on the spot. Claire held Emma while Reverend Stone tended to Layla's split lip. The community had gathered, word spread fast in small towns. And they'd chosen sides. That night, Brittany Ashford Morrison called Vinnie Calabrese. "The FBI is involved now. That woman is cooperating with them. If we're going to act, it has to be now, before they secure the money." Vinnie was quiet for a long moment. He'd watched the scene at the diner from his car. Watched a mother protect her child. Watched a young deputy choose duty over family pressure. Watched a community rally around one of their own. "What are you proposing?" "I have security contractors on standby. We take the money tonight, before the FBI can transfer it tomorrow." Vinnie thought about his grandchildren, about the legacy he wanted to leave, about the fact that he was dying anyway, that prison meant nothing when you had 6 months to live. "I'm in," he said, "but no one gets hurt, especially not the kid." "Whatever it takes," Brittany said coldly. "That money is mine." Back at the shack, Agent Reyes explained the plan. The money would be transferred to FBI custody at dawn. He'd stay with Claire and Emma overnight as protection. Jack Wade had volunteered to help secure the perimeter. Dolly had insisted on being present. 30 years of running from this, she said, was enough. Layla took Emma to her house nearby, where Reverend Stone stood guard, a safe distance from whatever was coming. As night fell, Claire looked at the shack that had been both salvation and curse. Tomorrow it would be over. The money would be gone. The ledger would expose decades of corruption. And she'd have nothing but the protection of a federal agent and the hope that justice actually meant something. It would have to be enough. In the darkness, 4 vehicles approached the shack from different directions. Brittany's hired security. Vinnie and his 2 remaining loyal associates. Deputy Morrison, responding to a call from Reyes, and Sheriff Pritchard, who'd decided that maybe, just maybe, it was time to choose the right side. The siege was beginning, and Claire, standing in the doorway with everything she loved at stake, understood that some battles couldn't be avoided. They could only be survived. Midnight came with the sound of engines cutting out on the road. Agent Reyes moved to the window, hand on his weapon. 3 vehicles. Maybe more. Jack Wade had set up a perimeter alert system. Nothing sophisticated, just tripwires with bells from the hardware store. They started chiming now, a discordant warning in the darkness. "Claire, get down," Reyes commanded. But Claire remained standing, watching shadows move between the trees. Somewhere out there, Emma was safe with Layla. That was all that mattered. Vinnie approached first, hands raised, visible in the moonlight. He walked to the porch alone, moving slowly. "Agent Reyes," he called out. 5 minutes of your time. Just talk." Reyes stepped onto the porch, positioned so he could see both Vinnie and the darkness beyond. "You've got 2 minutes. Let me take half. The FBI takes half. Everyone claims you found $86 million instead of $172 million. No one gets hurt. Investigation proceeds. Everyone wins. That's evidence tampering and theft of federal property. That's pragmatism." Vinnie's voice held no malice, just tired resignation. "I'm dying anyway. Let me leave something to my grandchildren. Some kind of legacy that isn't just shame and prison time." "No." Vinnie nodded slowly. "I respect that. You're one of the good ones. Rare." He turned to leave, then paused. "I'm sorry about what comes next." He walked back into the darkness. The assault came an hour later. Power cut out first, Someone had found the junction box. Then flashlight beams converged from multiple directions. A voice amplified by a megaphone. Claire Samson. Surrender the money and no one needs to get hurt. Brittany Ashford Morrison, Claire realized. She'd come herself. Jack Wade moved to the back window. For men, tactical gear. Private security, probably. Professional but not military. Reyes radioed for backup, but the nearest FBI support was 2 hours away. He called Sheriff Pritchard, who'd promised he was coming. The question was, whose side would Pritchard actually take? Gunfire erupted, not aimed at them but at the shack's walls. Warning shots. Intimidation. Then Emma's scream cut through the night from Layla's house, 200 yards away. Claire moved without thinking, instinct overriding survival. She bolted for the door. Claire, no. Reyes grabbed her arm. That's my daughter. More gunfire. Then sirens. Sheriff Pritchard and his deputies arriving, lights flooding the scene. And news vans. 3 of them, cameras already rolling. Dolly stood near the road, phone in hand, a satisfied smile on her weathered face. Called them 2 hours ago, she said to no one in particular. About time this town's secrets got some sunlight. Brittany realized the trap too late. She was on camera, directing armed men to assault a residence. Her sophisticated veneer crumbled as she screamed at her security team to retreat. One panicked contractor fired wildly. The bullet shattered what remained of the shack's front window. Emma's screams intensified. Claire broke free from Reyes and ran. Vinnie Calabrese stepped from the shadows directly into her path. Not threatening, but blocking Brittany's security team from pursuit. Go to your daughter, he said quietly. Then to Reyes, I surrender. Arrest me. By dawn it was over. Brittany and her security team were in custody. Vinnie sat calmly in handcuffs, having confessed to burying Robert Ashford decades ago. The money was secured by federal agents. And Claire held Emma in Reverend Stone's church, both of them shaking but alive. Is it over? Emma whispered to Mr. Whiskers. Claire looked at Agent Reyes standing guard at the door. At Marcus still in jail. At the news crews documenting everything. It's over, she said. But they both knew some things would never truly end. 3 months later, the shack on Mercy Lane was gone. The FBI had demolished it during their investigation, excavating the crawl space where they'd found Robert Ashford's remains exactly where Vinnie said they would be. The property stood empty now except for wildflowers someone had planted and a small stone marker. In memory of the miners of Redemption Falls and all who were silenced. Truth endures. Claire stood before it with Emma, the October wind cold against their faces. They'd driven 40 minutes from their new apartment in Huntington, a modest 2-bedroom paid for by the Federal Witness Protection Program, while Claire prepared to testify. Do you miss it? Emma asked, her voice stronger now. Therapy with Dr. Huang had helped. She spoke in full sentences most days, though Mr. Whiskers still accompanied her everywhere. The shack? No. Claire smiled. I miss what it represented. The hope that we could start over. But we did start over, just differently than we thought. Wisdom from a 7-year-old. Claire pulled her daughter close. Agent Reyes had visited last week with updates. 17 indictments so far. 2 sitting politicians had resigned. The ledger's exposure had triggered a reckoning that would take years to fully resolve. A victim compensation fund was being established from recovered assets. Not the full $172 million, but significant money that would finally go to miners' families who'd lost everything. Your testimony will be crucial, Reyes had said. Several high-profile trials. You'll be in protective custody throughout. And after you're free. New identity if you want it, though given the media coverage, that might be difficult. Or you can stay Claire Samson and build your life in the light instead of the shadows. Claire was still deciding. Brittany Ashford Morrison's lawyers were negotiating a plea deal. Multiple felonies including conspiracy, armed assault, and attempted theft. She'd spend years in prison, her entitled facade finally stripped away. Vincent Calabrese had received a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony about the mob's involvement. Minimum security facility, medical care for his cancer. His grandchildren visited him now, cautious reconciliation, but something. He'd written Claire a letter. I spent 37 years chasing money that was never really mine. Took prison and dying to realize what actually matters. You figured it out faster than I did. Take care of that little girl. She's the real treasure. Claire had cried reading it. She'd written back. They'd never be friends. But there was understanding between two people who'd made hard choices. Marcus Williams was another story entirely. He'd posted bail on the assault charges and violated the restraining order twice. Once showing up at Emma's school, once at their apartment building. Additional warrants were issued. He'd fled, last spotted in California. He's in the system now, Reyes assured her. Every law enforcement agency has his photo, and the domestic violence charges from your testimony mean he can't legally purchase firearms. We'll find him. But Claire knew Marcus's obsession hadn't ended. It was just interrupted. She and Emma remained in the witness protection program's peripheral support, check-ins, panic buttons, protocols for if he surfaced again. She'd learned to live with that weight. Some threats you couldn't eliminate, only manage. Emma was in therapy twice a week now. Dr. Huang drove from Charleston, refusing to abandon her patient. The selective mutism was improving. Emma's drawings had changed. Still houses with strong walls, but now they included gardens with flowers, people holding hands, sunshine. She's healing, Dr. Huang had told Claire. It's not linear. There will be setbacks. But she's resilient. Children are, especially when they have a parent who fights for them. Claire had enrolled in community college, studying social work. Classes started in January. She wanted to help other women escape abuse, to be the person she desperately needed during those 8 years with Marcus. The $172 million was tied up in legal proceedings, evidence in multiple trials. Claire would receive nothing financially. She'd signed documents confirming this, agreeing the money should go to victims. She lived on witness stipends and part-time work at the Huntington Public Library. $800 a month after rent. They ate simply, shopped at thrift stores, made every dollar stretch. It was tighter than when they'd had the money hidden beneath their floor. But Claire slept better now. No nightmares about blood money, no paranoia about who was coming to take it. Just honest poverty and clear conscience. That's worth more than any fortune, she'd told Layla during one of their weekly video calls. Layla visited when she could, the friendship having deepened into something like sisterhood. You saved yourself, Layla always said, and you helped save this whole damn town. Don't forget that. Redemption Falls was changing. Slowly but changing. Dolly had given depositions, her book about the town's history now in early drafts. Deputy Morrison was running for sheriff on a transparency platform after Pritchard's retirement. Reverend Stone's church had become a trauma support center, helping families process decades of buried grief. Jack Wade had quit private investigation entirely, joining a nonprofit that investigated corporate corruption. He checked on Claire occasionally, quiet guardian, asking nothing in return. She suspected he felt guilty about initially working for Brittany, though she'd forgiven him. You chose right when it mattered, she told him. That's what counts. The web of connections Claire had built. Layla, Dolly, Jack, Reyes, Stone, had transformed not just her life but rippled outward, touching everyone. Emma tugged on Claire's hand. Can we go home now? Home. Their small apartment with its second-hand furniture and Emma's drawings taped to the walls. Not much, but there's... Yeah, baby, let's go home. As they walked to the car, Emma whispered to Mr. Whiskers, we found a treasure after all, just not the one we thought. Claire smiled, thinking of that first desperate night in the shack, of the fortune that had seemed like salvation, of the impossible journey from that moment to this. She'd started with nothing. She'd found $172 million. And she'd given it all away to protect her daughter and expose the truth. Some might call that foolish. But driving away from Redemption Falls, not fleeing this time, just leaving, Claire felt richer than she'd ever been in that shack with millions hidden beneath her feet. She had Emma safe and healing. She had purpose. She had people who cared. She had agency over her own life for the first time in 8 years. And she had the knowledge that when tested, when every instinct screamed to take the money and run, she'd chosen right. The road ahead held uncertainty. Marcus was still out there. Trials would be grueling. Money would always be tight. Emma's trauma would take years to fully heal. But they were moving forward together, in the light with nothing to hide. That was enough. More than enough. As the mountains of West Virginia faded in her rearview mirror, Claire made a promise to herself. Whatever came next, she would face it standing her ground, speaking her truth, protecting her daughter. No more running. No more hiding. No more letting fear make her choices. The $172 million that had seemed like salvation was actually a test. One that would have destroyed her if she'd kept it. By letting it go, by choosing justice over security, Claire had passed. And in doing so, she'd found something no amount of money could buy, the strength to save herself. Emma fell asleep against the window, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her chin. Claire reached over and touched her daughter's hair gently. "We made it," she whispered. "We actually made it." The sun broke through the clouds ahead, and Claire drove toward it, toward whatever future they would build together, one honest day at a time. The shack was gone. The money was gone. The life they'd imagined was gone. But they remained, scarred, changed, but whole. And that was the greatest treasure of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.